Thanks everybody for coming to the our capstone presentations. I know there's quite a few of us and I'm sure a lot of us have a lot to say. So I'm going to just kind of try to keep it moving. And then hopefully I'll get a chance to get to any questions at the end. So for my capstone, I did an automated hydroponic system. Before I get too far, I had a little introduction. My name is Fergus. I'm a burgeoning IoT engineer. I spent the last basically 10 years working as a remodel carpenter out in Seattle. And that was an all right career, but it definitely it became time for a change. And so I found this class and I took the opportunity to move down here to New Mexico in September, and it's been going really well. I'm kind of an avid gardener. I'm not going to preach at you too much on that, but you know, I definitely think it's worthwhile to think about what you eat and where it comes from. And so I just find the gardening to be a really valuable hobby as well. It gets you outside working with your body, and then you know it gives you something at the end. So it's really nice in that way. And then I'm an artist and a tinkerer. I definitely, you know, when a weird idea hits my brain, sometimes I'm called to kind of build that, and I like taking things apart and trying to put them back together. And when things break, I try to fix it. And so this class has been a really good fit for me. And kind of this aquaponics has been a good fit for me as well. So, all right. So then what is aquaponics? Just a kind of quick overview, or hydroponics rather. So hydroponics is sort of an umbrella term for basically growing plants without using soil. Basically, you put the nutrients in the water, the plants suck up the water, they get the nutrients, and then instead of a lot of your water going to run off, you can recycle it, and it allows you to have really good water efficiency. But there's a huge variety in like the types of systems that people create. So there's a really wide range. You can see there's like the towers, there's these floating rafts, there's a whole variety of things that people can do. So it's a really fun space to kind of explore. There's also a bunch of different, even within hydroponics, little niches to explore. Some of the more interesting ones being aquaponics or aeroponics. Aquaponics is integrating fish into your system, and then the fish waste becomes the nutrients for the plants, and that actually can create really, really efficient loops and allow you to keep your water really clean and cycle your water for a really, really long time. There's definitely some pros and cons versus traditional growing methods. Traditional growing, you use a lot of land, you use a lot of water, there's a lot of labor. Whereas, you know, some of these techniques you can do with vertical farming, you can use a lot less land and you can use a lot less water, but, you know, there's a much higher startup cost because you have to build your system. And there's also a, you know, much higher energy cost because a lot of times you have to be running a lot of pumps. So you kind of got to, you know, manage your resources efficiently. But, you know, in a place like New Mexico where we don't have a lot of water, but hey, there's a lot of sun, you know, some of these systems might be really, you know, useful in the future. So just things to pay attention to. What I wanted to build was, you know, it's a prototype, you know, and it's something that could maybe be expanded, but, you know, I wanted to build something that I could take home and use and put in my kitchen. I basically had the idea of kind of doing it as an herb garden. And I wanted to use, you know, sort of a vertical farming techniques as well, you know, again, just trying to maximize the efficiency that you can get in a few square feet. And then I also wanted to have sort of a diversity of those water delivery systems so that I could grow a diversity of plants. You know, some plants the roots need a little bit more room, some need a little bit less. So, but all of that is agriculture and aquaponics. It's not IoT. So, you know, it was really interesting, but, you know, this is the stuff that the class was mostly on. And so most of the IoT stuff that I was really focusing was, you know, on using sensors and automation. So the, you know, sensors, it was kind of a, hey, what can I measure? You know, in terms of gardening, a lot of times your nutrients are this NPK blend, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. And you can measure each of those individually, but a lot of times the sensors to measure those individual ones are sort of prohibitively expensive for my application. And so I had to come up with sensors that would, give me that I could actually, afford, and then would give me data that would approximate, that other data. So like instead of measuring those specific, elements, I'm measuring like total dissolved solids, which sort of gives me a good approximation. And then the other half of the IoT stuff is kind of the automation side where, hey, I'm recording this data, I'm sending it to the cloud. I'm also like trying to make sure I'm keeping the data in specific ranges. And then there's also, a bunch of timing functions in terms of how frequently am I checking the sensors, how frequently am I pumping the water. So those are kind of the main IoT applications. And now we'll do the out my automated lettuce and kale from below. Then the water drains into this grow bed, where you can place plants that have larger root systems. The grow bed fills and then drains. Meanwhile, these sensors and pumps monitor the quality of the water and add amendments from these auxiliary tanks to the reservoir. Inside that reservoir, there is a large pump. The pump is controlled by a software timer that triggers this IoT relay. When that green light comes on, the pump turns on and starts pumping water through the system. The water will pump for 3 minutes, giving time for the plants above to get a good drink and for this grow bed to fill. The IoT timer runs the pump for 3 minutes. Then that green light shuts off, and so does the pump. Then the grow bed will be emptied by the bell siphon. The bell siphon was an interesting and fun part of this project. It's a series of nested tubes that allowed me to control the height of the water in the bed as well as draining the entire bed. It doesn't use any power. Sometimes automation is electronics and coding, but sometimes it's just clever design. There you can see the siphon catch and the water really start to drain. Even in an Internet of Things class, not everything needs to be connected to the internet. Still, some things really do. The heart of my project really is in the sensors and data. I measure the water pH, temperature, total dissolved solids, electric conductivity, and the oxidation reduction potential. I also measure the environmental air temperature, pressure, and humidity. All of this data is sent to that online dashboard and also displayed on this OLED. Importantly, the data is also analyzed within the code to keep the sensor measurements within set ranges. If the measurements fall outside of those ranges, amendments are needed. Here, the TDS is looking too low and the pH too high. My system uses 2 auxiliary tanks, one for this nutrient blend and the other for pH. This is really where the magic happens. In hydroponic systems, often you are constantly testing and trying to carefully balance your pH and your nutrient levels. But in this case, the sensors and the pumps do all the hard work. They add just a tiny bit of the nutrient blends or the pH balancer from the auxiliary tanks to the main reservoir, and then they patiently wait for the levels to stabilize before testing again to see if they need to add just a little bit more. They honestly make very good gardeners. Personally, I'm not always that patient. Let's see how they did. Looks like the water's been cycling. And you can see our parts per million is still pretty low, but it's gone up and the pH has gone down. Good job, sensors. All right, sorry about that, technical difficulties. I don't know why the embedded video was not loading very well, But so that was kind of the little video demo of the project working. You know, it's a really interesting project to take on. A lot of it, you know, was building the system, which I don't actually have a lot of background experience in. I've never done, I do a lot of traditional gardening, but I've never done aquaponics or hydroponics. And so I was learning about that. I was learning what I'm supposed to test for and how these different, you know, water delivery methods. So there was a lot of that to learn, as well as some of the plumbing was kind of a challenge. Getting that bell siphon to work was actually like trickier than I thought. Like I had to do some fine tuning to get the flow rates right, because it wasn't catching and then it wasn't stopping. So, you know, just like learning, you know, the IoT applications I already knew, but figuring out the systems to apply them to was definitely a challenge, you know, when you only have 10 days. And then the other one of the big problems that I had was sort of just the sensor calibration. A lot of these sensors, you know, they don't come out of the box and just read right, you know, so you have to, you know, test it. And that sort of required like knowing what your levels were. And if you don't have something to test them, it's hard to, you know, like say, oh, this is 100 parts per million. I don't have something that says that. That's what I want this sensor for. So it was kind of a little bit of a challenge. The pH in particular was I had to, you know, do some actual like plotting the points and finding the slope and putting the equation into the code. And that's not, you know, a problem, but, you know, when you only have limited time, it definitely slowed me down. And then another kind of problem just that is interesting with this sort of system was that, you know, my end product is really sort of only just the beginning, because, you know, what I want to be having is, you know, produce coming out of it. And so I got it going and I put some plants in it, but, you know, I need to iterate it and, you know, grow and have the opportunity to try to grow different things to see how it goes and to fine tune the system. So, yeah, looking forward, like I said, just kind of continuing to try to grow things, grow different things, see how the balance works. Different plants definitely like different nutrient levels. They like different pHs. So it would be really interesting to kind of try to over time see how things did in the system. And then there's a lot of, I know like you saw in the pictures when I was kind of describing hydroponics, there's a lot of different water delivery methods, the towers, the, you know, deep beds or the deep tanks. So that would be interesting to do. The IoT is more or less the same for a lot of those. So you could definitely try different things, you know, for what the different things you like. And then, you know, adding, depending on where you are, adding grow lights or, you know, trying to add fish into your tanks would definitely be something that I would be really interested in. But again, just with a limited scope for this project, I didn't have a chance to get to all that. And then kind of just that these, you know, IoT technologies have a lot of applications in other areas as well, like potentially, you know, brewing beer or something, you know, which is again, something I don't know anything about, but hey, you've got a lot of tanks, you need to measure them. Maybe it's pH, maybe it's some other levels. You get your sensors set up. Hey, if the range is this, do this. So, you know, there's a lot of applications for systems just like this. So that was, you know, just something to kind of look forward after having done the project. And then that's basically it, you know, out of time. So we'll have a couple minutes to do questions. I know I think I probably went a little long with the technical difficulties, but here's a couple places you can contact me. The code for all my projects is up on GitHub. There's some, you know, pictures and descriptions of how I did the projects on Hackster. That's my email. I also do have a website, although I will say that I have been focusing on, you know, building physical technology applications and not building web development stuff, especially in the last 10 weeks. So I don't really have any of my IoT projects on the website yet. But if you want to look at some of the carpentry and weird art stuff that I've done in the past, you could check out the website.